on, guys? Comics Kid 2099 here to talk to you about the Rings of Power, the Amazon Lord of the Rings series. I was not. It's not that I was like, ooh, I can't believe they're making this show. I wasn't angry about it, but at the same time, I wasn't especially excited either. I was pretty neutral, and even now, I don't really know what the overall consensus about the show is. I have seen a lot of negativity surrounding the show, but it's really difficult to separate all of that and decide, okay, what level of negativity are we dealing with? And this person who is so upset about the show, what exactly is it are they upset about? Because there are several different tiers of I don't like what they're doing here that you could potentially have. Now, I should go ahead and say I am not much of a Tolkien fan. I have read The Hobbit and I've watched the movies, extended editions and regular theatrical editions. And I like it okay, but it's not a world that I have been in a big hurry to dive more into. I read The Hobbit, enjoyed it okay, but it's not like I am just fervently diving into the Silmarillion and the appendices and trying to learn more about this world. I know very little about pre-The Hobbit Middle-earth stuff. So that is one level, I guess, of... spoilers, by the way. Spoilers for this show. But there are several different levels, like I said, of people being upset about this show. There's one level, you have the sexists. People who are like, ugh, Galadriel, I can't believe that a woman is picking up a sword. She should just get back in the kitchen and make me a sandwich. And there are people out there who are actually upset that Galadriel is putting on armor and is fighting battles. And I don't have a problem with that. Now, you have some people who, they may not be sexist, but they may say, well, Galadriel normally fought evil through more of a mystical side of things. She was casting spells in one of the Hobbit movies, and she wasn't so much a warrior as more of a wise person who was on the sidelines, and she got involved, but not physically as much as the Galadriel that we are seeing in the Rings of Power. And like I said, I have never read the Silmarillion or any of the appendices in The Return of the King, but my understanding is, at least in one of those places, it does mention that Galadriel was a little bit of a warrior. I think they mentioned once that she was Amazonian. Maybe that's more in stature, but that word kind of conjures ideas of warrior women. So I am not a Tolkien purist. I should go ahead and say that. I am very okay with other people making changes as long as it's a change that makes sense for the story being told. And if there is a protagonist to this show, it is Galadriel. And you need a protagonist to be proactive and do things and take action. And we all love Cate Blanchett as Galadriel in the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit movies, but she was not the protagonist. And so it's okay for her to sit on the sidelines and wink at Gandalf in those movies, because she is not the one who is taking action and is driving the plot forward in those stories. But that is who she is in the Rings of Power. So we need her to be proactive and do things. And so even if they never once mention that Galadriel picked up a sword and put on armor in the Silmarillion or the appendices, and I'll get to that in a minute, even if they never once mentioned it, I'm okay with that. You have to have a protagonist who is doing things. And it would be very difficult to make your protagonist sit on the side and be in all these council meetings and not actually going out there and driving the plot. So I did not have a problem with any changes that they may have made to Tolkien's vision. And I should point out that these guys making the show, I have no idea who even was making the show. I did very little research on this series, and I should point out, I'll get to that in a second. I'm very scatterbrained right now, but the people making this show, they did not have the rights to the Silmarillion. They only had the rights to the appendices at the end of The Return of the King. And I have not read any of that, like I said, so I don't know what they did and did not have the rights to. But there is a lot more pre-Hobbit stuff in the Silmarillion than there is in the last, 50 pages of The Return of the King, where it says stuff like, Galadriel was born in this year, in this age, Age and stuff like that, there's not as much meat to make a show out of in the appendices as there is in the Silmarillion, which they did not have the rights to. So a lot of people might be complaining about changes made to the lore when the people making this show are kind of handcuffed. They have to introduce original ideas while also kind of trying to stick to the lore that they did have the rights to. So they were in between a rock and a hard place. I do not envy them for what they had to do and how they had to do it. Now, maybe by the time this series is over, I've heard that they want this to be like a 4 or 5 season thing. Maybe by the time it's over, they might get the rights. I think I saw somewhere that, like, in the last year, the rights issue changed a little bit. That they had gotten the rights to maybe The Hobbit or something like that, and they didn't have the rights to that. I don't know. But I saw somewhere that some stuff had changed hands a little bit since, like, production on this show began. So, who knows? They might get to use some stuff from the Silmarillion before all is said and done. I don't know. But anyway, I should point out, like I said, I'm not a big Tolkien fan. I wasn't just super looking forward to this, but my sister is more of a fan than I am. She's read, I won't say all the books, because there's more books than people seem to realize. You've got the 3 Lord of the Rings books, The Hobbit, The Silmarillion, but then you've also got, when I was in college, I took a Tolkien class. I hope my professor's not watching this. I did not read any of the stuff I was supposed to read. But then there was the Tolkien reader. There's a book of unfinished tales, and I don't have the rights to that either in this show. And then there's, like, at my library, there's books that also have, like, fragments of stories. Like, there's one that Tolkien began and never finished, which was about people in the present day, and there was going to be some kind of connection between this one guy and something that was going on in Middle-earth, and different stuff like that. The War of the Ring. There's different stuff that Tolkien put out there. It's not just a trilogy, The Hobbit and Silmarillion. There's even more than that. The Children of Hurin, or the Songs of Hurin, or something like that. My sister has not read every word that Tolkien wrote, but she has read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. I think she's even read some of the unfinished tales and maybe some of the Silmarillion. She's more versed in Tolkien than I am. And so I asked her when she came to visit a few weeks ago, I said, do you want to watch this Rings of Power show? At that time, only 4 episodes had aired, and she was much more into it than I was. By the end of episode 4, I was actually hating the show, and she was still really into it. And she kept up with it week to week and asked me, are you going to keep watching? And I was like, probably when it finishes, I'll finish it. But even then, I wasn't in a big hurry. And it was kind of her reminding me, hey, episode 8 is done. Are you going to watch it? And I think she also wanted to talk about it with someone. And so I finally just sat down and watched the other 4 episodes. There were only 8 episodes this season. And I like the last half of this season better than the first half, but I do feel like this show, and I say this as someone who doesn't especially care about Tolkien purism. I don't feel like I'm a sexist. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. I just feel like the show was just really slow, just glacially slow. Very, very little happens in the first half of this season. There are 5 or 6 subplots that this show introduces you to, and very little happens in each subplot because most of the subplots are featured in most of the episodes. So you'll have a given episode where 5/6 of the subplots are featured in that episode, so none of them can actually move forward very much because they are all vying for screen time with each other. And lest you think that I'm exaggerating, I'm going to go ahead and count everything that's going on in the show. This may take a minute. So you've got this group of, they're basically hobbits. They're called Harfoots. They are nomadic little people, and they're like hobbits. They're the same species of hobbits, and they are moving around, and then they encounter this guy who falls from the sky. We will call him Meteor Man. And this show does a lot of the mystery box thing who's this? Well, according to the books, the wizards, they're not men who studied magic. They are actually basically angels that were sent to Middle-earth. And so this guy fell from the sky. He's probably one of the angels. But then there was also a whole lot of, is this guy Sauron? Is this guy Sauron? Maybe this guy is Sauron. And so you had a whole lot of that where people are it felt to me, it kind of reminded me of WandaVision, where people were more interested in trying to predict where the show was going than just watching the show and enjoying it. And so that always kind of irritates me, and I'm not trying to smack talk, water cooler talk. Everyone enjoys watching something and then talking about it with someone else. Like I said, my sister, I think she was just wanting to talk about the show with someone, and I'm the same way. I've been watching House of the Dragon, and I've been talking about it with my coworker every week. And so that I don't necessarily have a problem with when people are genuinely excited about something. But sometimes, especially on the internet, I feel like people are in a race to get internet points about a certain thing, trying to predict where a show is going, and the show is leaning into that, and that I do not care for so much. So we've got this guy. They never actually tell us who it is. I'm going to call him Meteor Man. There are several hints that it could be Gandalf. At one point, there are these people, spoilers, they work for Sauron, and Sauron's the bad guy of the Lord of the Rings movies, and he says something about, you came from the shadows, I'm sending you back to the shadows, and I believe Gandalf said something to that effect in Fellowship of the Ring. He says, back to the shadows, to the Balrog, and then at one point he tells one of the Harfoots something about following the road, and Gandalf said something to either Merry or Pippin about staying on the road or following the road, and so there are moments like that where it's like, okay, and at one point he's like towering over one of the Harfoots, and it's kind of getting darker and cloudier, and he's screaming at her, and that kind of reminded me of Gandalf towering over Bilbo, saying, I'm not here to hurt you, I'm here to help you. So there are these hints that it could be Gandalf. Now I have another coworker who is a much bigger fan of Tolkien than I am. She said Gandalf does not come to Middle-earth in this age. I can't remember. I think this show is set in the Second Age, I think, and I don't know what the difference is between First Age, Second Age, Third Age, whatever. I think that the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit stuff takes place at the end of the Fourth Age. I could be wrong, but she said, I think, that Gandalf doesn't come to Middle-earth until the Third Age. And so, at this point, I don't know if the people making this show, if they are aware that they are trampling over established lore, or if they know the lore, but they are deliberately contradicting things that Tolkien said for the purposes of telling this story here. Because it would be really weird in Season 2, which is going to come out like 2 years from now or whatever, based on how long it took them to make this season. It would be really weird if they said, by the way, my name is whatever the Blue Wizard's name is. I don't know. It'd be really strange because my parents are watching this show. They have no idea who the Blue Wizards are. I think they're mentioned once in one of the Hobbit movies. The Blue Wizards, in the grand scheme of things, were not very important in the big Lord of the Rings story. And most average laymen are not going to know who the Blue Wizards are. Now, you have Radagast, Saruman, two Blue Wizards, and Gandalf. So it could be any of them. I believe it's probably Gandalf. They've given us a lot of hints that it's Gandalf. I know I was just talking about people trying to predict things, whatever. They've given a lot of hints that this is Gandalf, and he is the most recognizable of the good wizards. It would also be really weird if he said, by the way, my name is Saruman, and then we were spending like 2 or 3 years with this guy who we know is eventually going to be evil, but that might be what they're going for. They might want to really just wrench our hearts out and say, look, you fell in love with this guy and he's going to be a bad guy later on. Maybe they'll do that. I don't think it's Radagast. I know that they're like entirely new cast here and are not really affiliated with the people who made the movies, but he doesn't really look like Doctor Who played Radagast, so I don't think that it's him. Like I said, they're giving us a lot of hints that this is Gandalf, and even if Gandalf isn't supposed to come to Middle-earth for like another 10,000 years, I feel like they're probably kind of combining some stuff in the timeline, streamlining things a little bit, so that they can tell the story that they want to tell. And then also, another are they aware of what they're doing situation, Galadriel is actually married to this guy. His name is I think Celeborn. And it's confusing because there's another elf named Celebrimbor or Celebimbor, and her husband I think is Celeborn. But there's two elven languages. There's Kenyan and Sindarin, and his name is Celeborn in one of the languages, and the other one is Teleporno. So I will just call him Teleporno. Teleporno is not here, and she is supposed to be married to him by now and have a daughter. Incidentally, the daughter marries Elrond, who is Liv Tyler's dad in the Lord of the Rings movies, and the daughter's name is Celebrian, and we don't see the husband at all. In fact, it's not until like episode 7 that the husband is even mentioned. Galadriel tells some guy that, I don't remember exactly the wording she uses, but basically she's parted ways with her husband. It's kind of leading you to believe maybe that he's dead, but I think the wording was kind of tricksy, and maybe he's not dead, and maybe they're just kind of making the lay people think that he's dead, but really he's not. But that's another thing where by this point she was supposed to be married, and again, it'd be really difficult for her to go out and fight in wars and stuff and also be married. And I don't know how they could have done that because they already had like 6 subplots. I haven't forgotten. I'm going to get back to that. So if they had Teleporno in this show, then that would have just been another subplot that they would have had to have juggled with everything else, and that would have been very difficult. Now, maybe in season 2, they kind of streamlined and combined several subplots in this season, so maybe in season 2, they can say, hey, he was over here hanging out with the Wood Elves for 10,000 years, and now he's back. Maybe they'll do something like that, and then they'll say, look, he's still here, Tolkien purists, it's okay. But anyway, so you've got Galadriel, who, her older brother, was killed by Sauron. Now, everyone knows who Sauron is. He's the bad guy of the Lord of the Rings movies, but he also was a minion to a bigger bad called Morgoth. And Sauron is kind of like a fallen angel, I guess, but I think he's not on the same level as Gandalf and the other wizards. He's more powerful, and then Morgoth is even more powerful still. Go watch, there's a video by, I think the YouTube channel is CCP Grey. He did 2 videos talking about the Lord of the Rings, kind of explaining some stuff that the movies and the show don't necessarily explain very well, like the hierarchy of the different creatures and stuff like that, and that is how I knew who Celebrimbor or Celebimbor is from watching that video. But anyway, so Galadriel's older brother was killed in a war with Sauron, so she is obsessed with finding and killing Sauron, and Sauron hasn't been seen for a really long time, and the High King of the Elves, he says, no, there's no more war, we're ending this war, and we're sending Galadriel and all of these other elves to the Undying Lands. And I always thought that was kind of like a permanent thing. At the end of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Galadriel, Gandalf, Bilbo, and Frodo, and I think Elrond, maybe, they're all going to the Undying Lands. And I always got the feeling that once you go there, that's kind of it, and there's no take-backsies. But then I was talking with my sister, and she said there were some people who went back and forth a few times. So Galadriel is, in her mind, she's basically being exiled, and she doesn't want to go. And then, like, seconds away from the entrance into the Undying Lands, she jumps off the ship, and then she meets up with this guy, Halbrand. And he kind of reminded me of Sawyer from Lost a little bit, and I'll get back to him in a minute. So meanwhile, Elrond is played by young Ned Stark from the Game of Thrones show, and he is sent, he talks with Celebrimbor, who wants to build something, and he needs to do it in 3 months. And he needs Elrond to go to the dwarves and ask them for something. And Elrond goes, and the dwarves, they're being dwarves, and they don't really want to be helpful, and so that is a subplot. So you've got the Galadriel stuff, and then you've got the Elrond stuff. Then you've got Meteor Man crashing, and he's hanging out with the Harfoots. And then you introduce another subplot a couple episodes in, where Galadriel and Halbrand, there's this shipwreck, and they find Galadriel. She's just floating on a piece of debris. They bring her on, and then some sea monster kills most of the people on this wrecked ship. And then Halbrand and Galadriel, they are found by this other guy who is a captain from Numenor. And Numenor is basically Atlantis in Lord of the Rings. Spoilers, Numenor is going to fall. They talk about that just a little bit in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Also, spoilers, Aragorn is descended from the Sons of Numenor. And the Sons of Numenor, I don't understand how it works. My sister tried to explain it to me. She couldn't make me understand. Somehow they are part elf, but also, like, Elrond is half elf, but he is still fully elf. He's not, like, less long-lived than Galadriel. He's still, like, thousands and thousands of years old, even though he is half elf. But the Numenorians, they have, like, a little bit of elf in them, and so they can live longer than, say, someone who's not from Numenor. I was trying to think of someone who's not from Numenor, but then it occurred to me that every human being in the Lord of the Rings movies, they're all, like Boromir, Faramir, Aragorn, they're all descended from the Sons of Numenor, I think. And so there's a deleted... It's either a deleted scene or it's in the extended edition of one of the Lord of the Rings movies where Eowyn is talking to Aragorn and says, so my dad says that you fought with him. How long ago was that? How old are you? And Aragorn says that he's like 80-something years old at that point. So I don't think they even bring that up, that the Numenorians are like really old in this show. But that is a thing in Tolkien lore. But anyway, so this sea captain guy, he finds Halbrand and Galadriel and brings them back to Numenor. So what do we have? We have Meteor Man and Harfoots, we have Galadriel and Halbrand, which then that gets merged into a Numenor subplot. We have Elrond and the dwarves, and then we have this other elf. He's an original character, I think. I do not remember his name, and he is also a soldier, and then we're told, okay, the war is over, and he has this human sweetie, and she has a kid. And again, a lot of people trying to predict where the show is going. Me and my family, we were all like 85% sure that the kid is actually this elf guy's kid. I guess he could be a human kid or an elf kid, but he seems human, I don't know. But anyway, they are here, and the kid has an evil sword, and then also, or maybe it's a sword, maybe it's a key, I don't know. And then at one point, this elf, he gets kidnapped and is forced to dig trenches by Benjen Stark, who is, I think, an elf, and he is a character from, and see, this is where I'm confused, because I've been seeing all over the internet that these guys do not have the rights to the Silmarillion. How long have I been talking about this? Wow, okay. They do not have the rights to the Silmarillion, but Benjen Stark is from the Silmarillion, I think. I would have to ask my sister if he also shows up in the appendices. I don't know. But anyway, this guy, he is in the Southlands, and he is driving the inhabitants of the Southlands out, basically because he is an orc rights activist. And he used to work for Sauron, and he was upset that Sauron didn't really care about the orcs, and so he killed Sauron, or so he says. And so that is... I guess it sounds like that's 4 subplots, but really, the Galadriel stuff kind of felt like a separate subplot from the Numenor stuff. And then Galadriel is on Numenor for what feels like 4 episodes, and like I said, when there's so much stuff going on, it's hard for any of these subplots to move. Elrond is sent to ask his friend, the Dwarf Prince, for this special material, Mithril. And if you've seen the Lord of the Rings movies and Hobbit, I think Bilbo has this special suit of armor that he later gives to Frodo. It's made of Mithril. And apparently, Elrond is supposed to get the Mithril so that he can take it back to Celebrimbor. And it takes like 4 episodes, and I'm realizing nothing has happened. Elrond came to the Dwarf Mountain, and the Dwarf Prince was like, hey, I don't like you because you claim to be my friend, but you haven't been here in like 20 years. And then finally, they get over that. Like, at the end of that episode, Elrond is eating dinner with the family, and they all seem to like him, and then nothing happens with the Elrond subplot for 3 episodes. And finally, Dwarf Prince's dad is like, okay, I don't like the elf guy. We're not giving him the Mithril stuff. And it just feels like that could have happened, like, in episode 2. You've got Meteor Man, who's walking with the Harfoots, and nothing happens with him for the entire season. He's just kind of walking around. He doesn't really talk in complete sentences. And then Sauron's servants, they think that he's Sauron, and then they give him something, and then he fights them, they run away, and now he can talk. And that felt like that could have been in episode 2. There was no reason for it to take 8 episodes for Meteor Man to say, I'm going in that direction. And then one of the Harfoot says, yes you are, and I'm coming with you. There's no reason that it needed to take that long for so little to happen. And then the elf guy who's kidnapped and digging trenches, it gets to a point where there's so much stuff going on that in the last episode of this season, characters just disappear, and there's several subplots that are just dropped. At one point, I think it's the second to last episode, we are in Dwarf Mountain, and then we pan down and we see the Balrog. And then I was thinking, oh boy, we're going to get to see some people fight a Balrog. And then my coworker said, no, the Balrog shows up like in the next age. And I'm thinking, okay, then why are you showing us the Balrog in this season right now? Because a lot of people can be forgiven for thinking that that's going to be a huge thing right now, that the Balrog has been awakened and it's going to come out and it's going to attack the dwarf people. But we don't even see any of the dwarves in the last episode. The last we see of them, Dwarf Prince is mad at his dad because Dwarf Prince said that he likes Elrond like a brother, and Dwarf King said, oh no, yeah. And then Dwarf Prince's wife said, one day you'll get to be king. And then that's it. It just suddenly stops, and then we don't see them anymore in this season. And then you've got elf guy who may or may not have a human kid and his baby mama, and they are there. And then the Southlands, huge spoilers, the Southlands become Mordor, because this one guy, he gets the evil sword thing that may also be a key, and then he goes and sticks it in a hole somewhere, and it sets off a volcano, and then that place becomes Mordor. As soon as the volcano erupted, Mordor. And then they treat that like a huge reveal in the last episode, like, it's no longer the Southlands, now it's Mordor. And I was like, yeah, we know, there's only one evil volcano place in Middle-earth, yeah, it's Mordor. And so then I have no idea what happens to that elf guy. His son, I think, is still around. He was talking to Galadriel, and he was the one that she said, yeah, my husband is gone, or something like that. I don't know what happened to the mom, and then Isildur, I forgot about Isildur. So yeah, in Numenor, we meet a whole bunch of people. So the captain of the fleet that rescues Galadriel, he is the father of Isildur. If you have seen the first 4 minutes of the Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, Isildur is the one who kills Sauron like a bazillion years before The Hobbit. And then he's the one, Elrond said, cast it into the fire, and he said, no, that's Isildur, okay? So we meet him when he's younger. I don't know how old he's supposed to be when he kills Sauron, but he definitely, in the Fellowship of the Ring, he looked older than he looks here. He looks super young in this show. And Isildur also has a sister. And then there's this other guy who kind of looks like Doctor Strange from Middle-earth, I guess. And then there's the King of Numenor, who's like on his deathbed, and then his daughter, who's basically the queen. Isildur has a sister. You have to understand, it's really difficult for me to keep up with everything that's going on in the show because there was so much going on, and then like a third of it actually gets some kind of resolution at the end of the season. So Galadriel is a guest at Numenor / prisoner because the Numenorians, they don't like the elves for reasons. And finally, Galadriel, with Halbrand's help, is able to convince the princess, who she was Amanda Waller from Arrow, convince her, hey, it'd be a really good idea if we went to the Southlands and we fought the bad guy, Benjen Stark. And she says, okay, yeah, let's do it. And so it's her, the captain, and Isildur. They join with Galadriel and Halbrand. And Halbrand is he's kind of like Aragorn because he is a prince of the Southlands, but he's not there doing what he's supposed to do. Aragorn is the king of Gondor, but he's not there actually ruling. And I never understood why he wasn't there doing his job. Same situation with Halbrand. And so they go to the Southlands, and so then you've got the Numenor subplot merges with Elf Guy and his human sweetie and her son. That all merges together. And then basically the Galadriel stuff kind of merges with the Elrond subplot, and then we just kind of leave the dwarf stuff behind, and then the Harfoots and Meteor Man, none of that really touches any of the other subplots. We do have the Servants of Sauron, but they do not, that whole subplot doesn't really intersect with the others. And then after the Southlands becomes Mordor, Galadriel finds out that Halbrand is not the rightful king of the Southlands, that he is actually Sauron in human form. Basically, when Benjen Stark killed Sauron, it weakened him, and then he was just hanging out as some dude. And this is where I'm a little confused, because if you take what's happening at face value, before you find out that this guy is Sauron, it's easy to think that he just wants to kind of hang out and be left alone. When they're on Numenor, he says that he would like to work in the metalsmith shop. And he says, even if I'm just sweeping a broom, I just want to work here. And he kind of is fighting Galadriel, saying, I don't really want to go back. I don't want to be the king of the Southlands. And she's the one saying, you have to take your responsibility and do your duty and stuff like that. And he has this symbol that is the symbol of the king of the... I need to make sure that my camera doesn't run out of time. I think I can do it. He has this symbol that represents, like, being the king or something like that. And then Celebrimbor, he is talking about how he needs to make this thing, and he says some word that sets off something in Galadriel's mind. And I didn't get it, but I'm assuming, because at the very beginning of the show, Galadriel and her elf squadron, they found a sword, I think it was, and it said something on it, and I have a feeling, I'm not going to go back and check, I have a feeling that the sword that she found, that said the same thing that Celebrimbor said when he was talking to the Elf High King and Elrond. And she's like, wait a minute, I'm suspicious now, and she thinks something is going on, and I think what happened, Sauron was maybe using telepathy or something to talk to Celebrimbor and suggest to him, hey, you need to make this thing and do it in like 3 months. Now, I still don't understand why the deadline, why it has to be in 3 months, and also I don't know what Sauron's powers are. I know that in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit that the ring can corrupt people, but the ring doesn't exist yet. So I don't know if Sauron is able to corrupt people from a distance. I don't know, because I was thinking that because Halbrand is brought to wherever it is that Celebrimbor is, and he's wounded, and I thought Celebrimbor was going to be like, hey, I know that guy, and that was going to kind of be how Galadriel figured out who he was, but that doesn't happen. He acts like he doesn't know who Halbrand is, but somehow Galadriel, she gets an idea, I may need to look into this, and she realizes that the Southlands, the king has been dead for like 1,000 years, and there is no heir to the king. I don't know why she didn't know that. I mean, she's like pretty old. I would think that she probably should know who all the kings are of the different places in Middle-earth, but whatever. And so Sauron says that, you know, you should join me. It's kind of like a Kylo Ren and Rey thing, or kind of like a Darth Vader Luke thing. Join me. You know, we can rule this planet benevolently, and, you know, I'm not that bad of a guy. I just want to heal the planet. And she's like, no, I'm not having any of it. And that's really the only resolution to anything in this season. They do end up making 3 elven rings, and then Celebrimbor gets one, Elrond gets one, and Galadriel gets one. The king tells them, go ahead and do it, and I don't know why he doesn't get a ring, but whatever. And we know, again, from watching like the first 5 minutes of Fellowship of the Ring, that eventually the dwarves will get rings, and the men will get rings. And I'm assuming that's going to take a while for that to happen, but I just feel like a lot of this show, it just feels like, okay, it just stops, and we don't really know what's going on. Isildur is left for dead in a forest somewhere. The queen of, I guess she's the queen now, of Numenor, she is blinded, and there's this other guy on Numenor who he was talking really sinister with his son, and his son tried to sabotage the fleet of ships before they even left. That just stops. We don't know what's going on with those two. And then you got the elf guy and the woman that he likes, and then her son. We don't know what's going on with any of them. There's a whole lot of stuff, the dwarves, especially with the Balrog. I thought for sure that we were going to see some resolution to that Balrog thing in this season. And I am not... You look at like the 1990s with like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I'm trying to think which season it is. Season 2 ends with Buffy just leaving Sunnydale. And it's a big cliffhanger. And then you wait like 3 months for the next season, because back then TV shows would start in the fall, and then there might be a little bit of a break during December, and then they would pick up again sometime late January, and then they would go till right before summer, and then during summer the shows would be on break, and then they'd start again in the fall. Basically, they would follow a school calendar, and like when I was watching Fringe, that was kind of how it went. There'd be a pretty big break during Christmas time, and then it'd pick back up, and then it would end right before summer. And so 3 months-ish, 3 or 4 months, really isn't that long to wait for a cliffhanger to be resolved. But I have no idea how long it's going to take for Rings of Power Season 2 to come out. And it's the same with House of the Dragon. House of the Dragon, as of me recording this video, I have not seen the final episode of House of the Dragon, but it's probably going to end on a pretty big doozy of a cliffhanger. Like, ooh, I can't wait to see what happens next. But it took them like 2 years to film this, and it's probably going to take them that long to churn out another 8 or 9 episodes. And it's probably the same with Rings of Power. I remember the first thing they released was like just a picture of, I think, Numenor, maybe, or maybe it was where the Elf High King is, wherever that is. It's not Rivendell, it's some other elf place. They released a picture of that like well over a year before the first episode came out. It's going to take them a really long time to get the next season out. And to leave, for my opinion, to leave so much stuff up in the air where we don't know what's going to happen, I think one cliffhanger would be fine if we were going to get that resolved in a few months. But by the time Season 2 comes out, I am not going to feel like watching this season again, especially since so little happens, and then I'm going to be confused what's going on in Season 2 because there are so many cliffhangers, and I won't know what's important and what's not. Is the Balrog not really important because it's coming in the next age? I don't know. And that's another situation where the show is stuck between a rock and a hard place, because you have the Tolkien hard purists who are going to be mad that they're making any changes at all, but they have to make some changes to suit the people like me and my parents who don't know very much about Tolkien, and they're just here to watch a show. And if they say this is Joey the Blue Wizard, my parents are going to be like, who is that? Why is he important? And so I feel like they're really, like, they're trying. I think they are trying. I think they could also probably try a little harder, but I feel like they could, I don't know. I really don't know what they could have done. I think that this show just had a lot of balls that it was juggling. I think they could have, like, just resolved the Meteor Man thing in, like, one episode, and then don't have him be present in every episode where very little is happening with him. And then you could spend a little bit more time on all of the other subplots where all of those things are kind of touching each other and interconnected a little bit more. And Meteor Man is probably going to be important in, like, Season 2 or 3 if he's going to be fighting Sauron. So you probably had to do that, but it didn't have to take up the whole season. So anyway, I don't know if I left anything unsaid. I feel like I've been pretty exhaustive on this. I hope that my camera's still running. Yes, I think it is. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the Rings of Power. It's fine, I guess. I really don't know who I would recommend this to, because, like I said, Tolkien purists, people who read the Silmarillion and the Unfinished Tales, and they know everything that happened before The Hobbit, front and back, I don't think they're going to be too happy with this. I think that it makes so many changes, and they're not even, in my opinion, they're not even big changes, but it makes just enough changes that the Tolkien purists are going to be mad. But I don't know if people who don't know jack about Tolkien are going to enjoy the show either. I asked my mom, and she, it kind of took her a while to kind of put her thoughts into words, but she pretty much agreed with me that there was too much going on for the number of episodes we were getting. And it leaves so much stuff up in the air. What's going on in Numenor? And my sister, she looked into some of the appendices and said, oh, okay, yeah, this thing happens, and I didn't care. It's going to be 2 years. I'll probably forget. And then I went and rewatched the first 5 minutes of Fellowship of the Ring, and I was spoiled on something, sort of, that I had forgotten. And so I'm thinking, like, okay, I wish that we had a little bit more, like, okay, like, it doesn't have to be, like, all evil is defeated and it's a happy ending, yay. It doesn't have to be that. But I feel like there was more that could have been at least somewhat resolved by the end of this season. So, yeah, like I said, I really don't know who I would recommend this show to. I think just, if anything, the absolute snail pace pacing of the show in the first like 4 episodes really killed any interest that I did have, and I didn't have that much interest in it anyway. And it's around episode 5 when subplots start to merge, but by then I didn't care, and I was just kind of watching it just to get it over with. So yeah, I hate that I'm so down on it, because I think people were kind of ready to be down on it before it even started, and I wasn't like that. And I think a lot of people who hate it don't really have good reasons for hating it, but I also don't think that I can say enough to really praise the show either. So anyway, I've lost my voice. I hope you guys like this video, and I will see you guys in the future with some more stuff. In the meantime, have a great rest of your day. Catch you later.